Hey everyone, and welcome back to Nutty Chess Tips with me, Nutty T. First on the agenda is a big appreciation from myself to you, the subscribers that keep coming back for great chess content. In today's video, we're going to be exploring the lines of the Jobava London system with the Bishop F5 lines. I'll put part 1, the Jobava against the King's Fianchetto, in the cut above. So, as usual, check it out. First moves on the table are d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop c4, and as we're exploring the bishop f5 lines, bishop f5. And now we just push e3. Now your opponent will usually go e6 or c6. First up we will go e6. And now we simply go knight f3. They usually go e6. We go knight e5. And if they go knight d7 here, we simply go g4. Bishop usually goes to g6. And now we go h4. If they go h6, knight takes the bishop on g6. And when they take on g6, we go bishop d3, and we're eyeing this pawn on g6. And now if they want to protect it, the king has to go to f7. Queen f3. Bishop usually goes to b4, pinning this knight to the king. And now we simply castle. Bishop usually takes on c3, we take back. And if the queen goes to a5, we have this lovely move, g5. Now, if the knight moves out of danger, we have this lovely move, boom. And we've got a discovered check, as well as the bishop taking the queen on the next move. So, let's go back. So what if your opponent spots this and goes king g8? And now we just whip off the pawn on g6. The queen will usually move to a5 to threaten the c3 pawn. We simply go g5. And now if your opponent goes knight e4, we simply whip it off with the bishop. When they take, we take. And then if king f7, g takes the h pawn, they take back, and bishop e5. We're threatening the rook. And if they try a desperation maneuver such as queen check, we simply go b1. Now your opponent will usually try and simplify and take this bishop. We simply take back with the pawn, and now we have another open file. Queen e7, going back to try and protect the king. And now we go rook d6. Rook usually goes to d8 to trade. And now we just go rook g1. Now, as you can see, this black king is in serious trouble. If they take, we take. They take back, and now we go in for the kill with queen g6 check. And as you can see, wherever the king moves, we are just winning. So if the king goes back to f8, queen f6, they can only move to e8. We simply whip off this rook, d7 for the king. As you can see, there's an unstoppable attack. Let's go back. So what if your opponent goes e6, knight f3, and now the common moves I've seen in this situation are bishop d6 and bishop b4. So first off, we will go bishop b4. If your opponent goes bishop b4, I just recommend going on the attack straight away with bishop d3. I've seen this common tactic with black many times where your opponent just goes for knight e4, and now they're looking to try and take this knight with their knight, and then when we take back with the pawn, they take with the bishop, and they're eyeing up the rook as well as checking the king. So in this situation, I just recommend to castle. If they take, we take back with the pawn. When they take with the bishop, we move to b1. In one game I had, my opponent went bishop d3. Now in this situation, I took back with the queen, eyeing up the bishop on c3. My opponent went back to a5, and now I just check with the queen on b5. My opponent protected with knight c6, also keeping an eye on this bishop on a5. Now I just simply take the free pawn on b7. My opponent went knight e7, just getting out of danger, and now I simply go on the attack and go c4. My opponent took, and now I stick with the attacking pattern and go queen a6, attacking this bishop. Bishop retreats to b6. I contemplated this for a while and thought, what should I do here? Carry on with the attack, carry on being aggressive, and I went a4 to try and keep an attack going on this bishop, because now my queen's here, their pawn can't block, and my opponent went c6, trying to make an escape square for this bishop. Obviously in the Jobava, this is a beautiful space for the knight, and you will see it very regular, is knight e5. My opponent castled here. I simply took the pawn on c4. My opponent went c5, trying to counter attack, but I just go a5. My opponent went bishop c7. I simply whip off this bishop. They take back with the queen, and now I did this lovely move, which was rook b7. Queen now retreats to d8, and now I just take off the pawn on c5. And then my opponent just went rook c8, threatening this pawn, but then obviously I see the free pawn on a7, and I just take it. My opponent then goes back to a8 with the rook, queen b6. Both pawns are guarding. My opponent actually took the queen, and I took back with the a pawn. And as you can see, these two pawns are really strong now. My opponent went knight c6, and I went rook c7, threatening the knight. My opponent then went knight b4, and now I just push the pawn to b7. And as you can see, look at this, it is absolutely dominating now. My opponent went rook b8, and now instead of pushing this pawn, I went rook b1. I just threatened the knight on b4, and now my opponent goes knight d5, threatening the rook. So I go rook d7, keeping the pawn safe, and now my opponent goes knight c3, threatening the other rook. So I now go and cover the a file with the rook. The knight goes back to e4, threatening the pawn on c5. So I go c6. My opponent goes knight f6, threatening the rook. And instead of going c7 or e7, because I just thought this was counterproductive, maybe my opponent was looking for a draw. In this situation, I'm just winning. So counter attack, knight e5. My opponent took, and then I took, and as you can see, I'm forking the rooks. My opponent went with d8, and now I just take off the other rook on b8. My opponent takes, and now I was contemplating this move, a8. This is just winning, but then I saw this move, which is c7, and this is even stronger. So my opponent went e8, and now I just promote the b pawn to a queen. My opponent takes. As you can see, we just have this simple move of promoting the queen, and boom, checkmate. So let's go back. So now what do we do if your opponent goes bishop d6? We simply put the knight on e5. Your opponent usually castles, and if he castles, this is a beautiful line. We just go g4. The most common lines I've seen in this situation are bishop takes on e5 and bishop g6. So we'll go through them both. First off, bishop e5. We simply take with the pawn, and when they take the pawn with the knight, we go f3. Now they usually go knight h6, and now we stop any nasty checks with the queen with h4. Your opponent will usually go something like d4. We simply go knight b5. If they go c6, we simply take off this pawn, and if they go to guard the pawn, and now we simply push a pawn to e4, threatening the bishop. And as you can see, we're just winning here. So let's go back. What if your opponent goes knight c6? Then again we go e4. And as you can see, this bishop is trapped. When the bishop goes back, we simply go h5. So what happens when your opponent goes bishop g6? We have this move h4. And now there's two moves you usually see in this situation. It is either h6 or h5. If they go h5, we simply take, and if they take, we go e2. Bishop usually takes on e2. We take back with the queen, and then if you see bishop b4, we simply go bishop g5. So they've already moved here. If they move away, they're just going to lose a tempo. So they usually take the knight on c3. We take back with the pawn. And then they usually go knight d7, attacking our knight. We simply take the knight. When they take back with the queen, we simply take the knight on f6. When they take, we have this lovely move, rook g1, and as you can see, no matter where the king moves, on the next move, we have boom, checkmate. So let's go back. After the h4 move, what if they go h6? We just go g5. Knight usually goes to e4. We take the pawn on h6, and if they take, we go knight e4, taking their knight. They usually take back with the pawn, and then we take the bishop with the knight. They usually go f takes g, bishop takes on h6, and then they usually go rook g7, getting out of danger. We simply go bishop g5, iron up this queen, So the queen usually moves to f8, and now they're eyeing up this weak pawn on f2. We simply guard with the queen and put the queen on e2. Knight d7. We simply go bishop h3, and we're eyeing up this weak pawn. Rook e8, protecting the pawn, and now we go h5. They have to take. Queen h5, and now the only move they can really do is rook h7, and now we have this lovely move, kamikaze. Bishop takes on e6 check. They have to take, and now we simply go skadoosh, checkmate. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Check out the other videos. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and it's nice.